Joe Brady might be the perfect fit for a fan favorite in this year's NFL draft to end up here in New Orleans. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we have 3 mock drafts for you, all 4 rounds apiece, each one looking at a different top head coach candidate for the New Orleans Saints and how to help build their team through the NFL draft. We're going to take a look at Aaron Glenn, rebuilding the defense with him. We'll take a look at getting Kliff Kingsbury's offense ready for him in New Orleans, and how to give Joe Brady the pieces that he wants is what's going to lead us off, including a fan favorite tight end headed to New Orleans in the process. Let's get to all that on today's show. We appreciate you, whether it's your first time or your next time, for making Locked On Saints your first listen and for being an everyday or here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady is moving on to the AFC Conference Championship. And if he were to move on from there to the New Orleans Saints front office as their head coach, or coaching staff rather, as their head coach, he would be a perfect fit for a fan favorite NFL draft prospect to find his way to New Orleans. And he might be able to help solve the New Orleans Saints running back, not really problem, but build the Saints running back room without even having to get to the draft for it. So let's take a look at our first 4-round mock draft, building an offense for Joe Brady. Real quick, before we get to that, I want to give you one quick piece of news. The Saints are expected to bring in Anthony Weaver, Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator, for an in-person interview on Tuesday, according to Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. And also, according to Pelissero, the Saints are also expected to bring in Mike Kafka for an in-person interview on Wednesday as well. We're going to lead off tomorrow's episode, take a look at both of those candidates. We expect that Aaron Glenn will be in this week as well. We'll get to an Aaron Glenn mock draft here in just a moment, but wanted to just give you that quick update. 4 quick rules for the mock drafts today. Number 1, we're drafting for each coach. Number 2, we're not drafting for their hypothetical coaching staff. So if it's an offensive coach, we're going to have more offensive picks. If it's a defensive coach, we're going to have more defensive picks. I'm not trying to pretend like I know who they're going to bring in on staff or anything like that. So drafting for the coach, not the hypothetical. So that's rule number 2. Rule number 3, I'm going to avoid my favorite first round prospects. So you're not going to hear about Tedoroa McMillan. You're not going to hear about Ashton Ginty. We're going to get a little bit more creative because I want to give you more names as well. And then rule number 4, I will not pick the same prospect twice in these drafts. Each of them will include 6 entirely different prospects from one another. That also just maximizes our conversation and what you're hearing. All right, let's get to it. So round 1, pick 9 with Joe Brady. I'm taking Tyler Warren out of Penn State. The 6'6", 261-pound tight end is one of the best tight ends in the country and would give Joe Brady maybe the one and only coaching staff option out there that would actually know how to potentially make him fit in multiple roles the same way that Taysom Hill fit in multiple roles. There's a big misconception out there that Joe Brady helped to build the Taysom Hill game plan. He did not. He was a part of the RPO game plan, but he wasn't like the person that led building the Taysom Hill game plan, but he was around for the best parts of Taysom Hill under Sean Payton. So I do think, and really the impetus, right? The beginning, the catalyst of I almost said Tyler Warren, of Taysom Hill's time in New Orleans. So as a versatile chess piece. So I think that's one place where you could actually go with Tyler Warren and say, okay, maybe he could be successful in multiple things. I still think focusing down when he gets to the NFL is going to be best for him and is going to translate to greater success. But the Saints, who aren't expecting to be successful or shouldn't be expected to be successful in 2025 without the long-term quarterback question answered, go ahead, draft the tight end. Fine. It's all good. I'm passing on running back, and one of the reasons why is because I'm looking at Ty Johnson, one of the best third down backs in the NFL, could potentially follow Joe Brady to New Orleans. Why would he go to New Orleans and not stay in Buffalo? Well, Buffalo might not want him, right? They've got James Cook, but they also have Ray Davis, outstanding young running back over there. So it was easy for me to pass on one of the top running backs in this draft because I'm envisioning a world in which Ty Johnson follows Joe Brady over to New Orleans. I'll have a little free agency addition for each one of these coaches as well. So tight end, running back, all kind of taken care of here. Round 2, pick 40. I went with offensive lineman out of North Dakota State, Gray Zabel. He's a really interesting guy because at 6'6", 305 pounds, he's played all 5 offensive line positions. I think he could be a plug-and-play guy for you immediately at left guard, which is where I think the Saints' biggest need on their offensive line is excellent zone run protector as well. He will be at the Senior Bowl, so they'll get a little bit of a closer look at him as well. Another Senior Bowl prospect going to New Orleans at round 3, pick 71. Wide receiver Jalen Royals out of Utah State, 6 foot, 205 pounds, only played in 7 games this season, but his draft stock is about to explode. Once people get a better look at him at the Senior Bowl, the Combine, all those kinds of things, he's going to blow up. And if you're able to still get him in the 3rd round, I think he'd be an excellent selection as a guy that complements a little bit more what Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed can bring, but still bring some versatile possibilities himself as a guy with good speed, but that can also go up and fight for a football and make some tough catches. He can kind of be the Amari Cooper that the Bills were hoping to get in their trade this past season. Next up, round 3, pick 93. I went with defensive tackle Derek Harmon out of Oregon. He's an interesting prospect because his draft stock is literally everywhere. Like, you can run these simulations and things like that, and he's available all the way down into the 4th round, but then there's times that he flies off the board in the high 70s. There's times where you can actually find him in the 1st round of other people's mock drafts and things like that. So again, like, at this point, there's no sense in saying, well, that person won't be there, that person will be there. It's January. We don't know yet. But once the Combine happens and all this other stuff, Derek Harmon's stock is probably going to rise big time, much like Jalen Royals. So he might not end up being available at this point. But at 6'5", 310 pounds, and as a defensive tackle, I think what you're really looking at here is getting that kind of mold, right? It could be Derek Harmon, it could be somebody else. But you're looking for one of those big-bodied defensive tackles that also gives you some of the athleticism to be able to contribute to the pass rush, but that can clutter up the middle of a defense as well. And I like Derek Harmon for that. So going ahead and going with him as our first defensive selection, and really what will only be our only defensive selection in this mock draft. Round 4, pick 110. I went with another wide receiver. Saints don't often double up at positions in the draft, but we're throwing some conventions out of the window because new leadership means new angles. I went with wide receiver Pat Bryant out of Illinois, 6'3", 200 pounds, 1 drop on just 78 targets in 2024, 948 receiving yards at 10 receiving touchdowns, and caught over 60% of his contested catches as well. Here in the 4th round gives you an opportunity to get another big-bodied contested catch receiver that can do some of the physical things in the red zone and stuff like that, which is where the Bills won their game up against the Baltimore Ravens last night. They did it in the ground, but I mean, the red zone, they were outstanding there. And I think Pat Bryant is the guy that could potentially help you out there. And then finally, round 4, pick 129, center Jonah Monheim. I had to do this. I absolutely had to do this because the Saints desperately need another center on their team. And so 6'5", 320 pounds, has played literally everything but left guard, but could play left guard if you needed him to. The Saints need a backup safety, a true backup safety. Monheim would be able to give them that. So we built the trenches. We got a versatile chess piece in Tyler Warren, as well as a top tight end. We got a couple of really nice wide receivers and bolstered the depth or the interior of the defensive line while also bringing in Tyler Johnson to help the running back room and give you another versatile piece there over on the offensive side, all in this mock draft and trying to rebuild Joe Brady's offense in New Orleans. Coming up next, I want to take a look at Kliff Kingsbury and an Ohio State wide receiver that could mimic the success of a Terry McLaurin over in Washington and how the Saints could get their hands on him this offseason. Let's get to that next as we continue on with Mock Draft Monday here on the Locked On Saints podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn Jobs, the best place to go if you're looking to hire for your small business. As we know, you're looking for the smartest insights. You're not going to find smarter insights anywhere else than LinkedIn, who have the strongest hiring data available and making sure that they're helping you identify the right candidates and helping you make the right hires. Because as we know, businesses are only as successful as the hires that they make. I've used LinkedIn before on the opposite side, looking for jobs. They make that process super easy. And big reason why it ends up being so easy is because of how easy things are to set up on the small business side. It helps you write job descriptions, things like that. So it makes it super easy for me as somebody that might be looking for something to find a spot. I can only imagine how easy it is for the small businesses. And according to 72% of those small businesses, LinkedIn has helped them find high quality hires each and every time. So hire smarter and find your next great hire at LinkedIn. Post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode of Locked On Saints also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. And boy, did I knock my Prize Picks projections out of the park this week. My goodness, the division round was good to me. I took more on Jared Goff, 230 passing yards, nailed it. Took more on Saquon Barkley, 1 touchdown, nailed it. Took more on Jaden Daniels passing yards as well, nailed it. Got a couple others right too. Man, it was a really, really nice week over at Prize Picks. And that's what I love about Prize Picks, because it's that easy. They give you a projection. You pick more or less. You do that for 2 to 6 players. You can win up to 100 times, 1,000 times now, actually, your entry back. With over 10 million members and billions of winnings, it's clear to see why people are loving this platform and why you will too. And make it even easier, there's a special offer for our Locked On listeners. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, family, continuing on with our Mock Draft Monday. We took a look at giving Joe Brady his offense in New Orleans. Just as a reminder, that one, Tyler Warren in the first round. We went with North Dakota State offensive lineman Gray Zabel. Then in the third round with both of those picks, we went with Jalen Royals, wide receiver out of Utah State, as well as Derek Harmon, interior defender out of Oregon, Pat Bryant out of Illinois, as well as Jonah Monheim. Those guys end up kind of wrapping up our 4-round mock draft. Now I want to take a look at Kliff Kingsbury, because if you're looking for change for the New Orleans Saints, Kliff Kingsbury might be the person that brings the most change in the shortest amount of time, which is still going to be a couple years, especially with the quarterback question mark. But man, does he bring a lot of change. So I wanted to take a look at what a mock draft would look like for him. And real quick, I wanted to say too, because I forgot to give a shout out at the beginning of the show, but I want to give a shout out to Eric Bro, who was the Eric_Bro on Twitter, who came up with this idea, by the way, of doing a mock draft for each of the head coaches and stuff like that. So shout out to Eric for the great idea. I love the offseason because we get to do some of the more interactive stuff and everything like that. So big shout out to Eric. Anytime you guys have ideas, you all have ideas, send them to me. Let me know and we'll find a way to make it all work. So when it comes to Kingsbury, the idea here is like, can you flip as much on the offensive side as possible? Remember, we're focused on the offense. I'm not really worried about trying to project what the coaching staff as a whole might be and what they might want and all those other things. I'm just kind of worried about who the head coach is and then giving them something. And look, Kingsbury could bring some interesting guys with him from Washington as well. Jeremy McNichols, he could end up bringing like wide receiver Noah Brown. He could potentially bring wide receiver Dyami Brown, although considering how much Dyami Brown's already been through on his rookie contract, finally having the quarterback in Jaden Daniels would be very, very hard, I imagine, to get him to go anywhere else. But remember, if Kliff Kingsbury gets hired away somewhere, there's going to be a new offensive coordinator that comes in, and that offensive coordinator might like certain fits at wide receiver, certain fits at running back that change what opportunities those guys still have in Washington, and instead lead them to following wherever Kliff Kingsbury goes because they know the opportunity that they have with Kingsbury. So don't forget that part, right? Like the success doesn't stay. The success has to be recreated. So knowing that could happen, it makes a wide receiver in the first round maybe a little bit pointless, right? If a Dyami Brown goes with him or if a Noah Brown goes with him, then you might not necessarily need to go wide receiver in the first round. But just an interesting idea here. Ohio State wide receiver Terry McLaurin is the number one guy over in Washington. That's just over 6 foot, not quite 6'1", but just over 6 foot, 200 plus pounds. He has been the number one guy there for many years now. He finally has the quarterback that allows him to actually be a number one guy, as we always knew he would be here on Locked On Saints. We were very high on Scary Terry. And another guy that I'm really high on is Ohio State wide receiver Emeka Egbuka, who's coming out this year at 6'1", 200 pounds. Now, he is a wide receiver that doesn't fit the 6'2 plus, 215 plus mold as like this big bodied guy, but he has the physicality and the deep field ability and the long speed. He's got a lot that works for him. And so could he be a Terry McLaurin in Kliff Kingsbury's system? You might as well draft him from the same program. You might as well draft a guy that's effectively the same body type, but a little bit bigger. And you might as well draft a guy that's got a lot of production in college football. So I'm going with Emeka Egbuka there at round 1. I'm sticking with pick 9, but really he could be a trade back option, all these other things. It doesn't matter. But like opportunity here to give Kliff Kingsbury his Terry McLaurin right away. And you might be going, Ross, I can't believe you would take Egbuka right there within the top 10, because now what are you going to do with all the rest of the positions? Here's the great news about the NFL draft. There's more than one pick. So we turn around to round 2, pick 40, and we get edge rusher Princely Umanmielen out of Ole Miss, 6'4", 255 pounds. He'll be at the Senior Bowl. Gives you a good blend of power and speed, gives you somebody that can win with bin, but they can also just be bigger and better than the guy in front of you, and has the athleticism to handle the mobile quarterbacks. So we still were able to build the trenches. Round 3, pick 71, Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end out of Bowling Green. In my opinion, the best tight end in the country in this year's college football season. 6'4", 230 pounds. Probably want to bulk him up a little bit, but that should be easy with that frame. One of the leading receivers in the nation in terms of receiving yards. Also going to the Senior Bowl, so you'll get a better and closer look at him. We know how much the New Orleans Saints love their Senior Bowl prospects. Remember, they fell in love with Adam Troutman at the Senior Bowl and traded their entire day 3 to make sure that they drafted him. Now a guy like Harold Fannin Jr. Could be available in a similar range. Let's go on and pick in round 3. A guy that won't be at the Senior Bowl, but continuing to build the trenches here, J.J. Pegues coming out of Ole Miss. Chucky Mullins Award winner, which means that he's the guy that kind of like the Ed Block Courage Award, right? But for Ole Miss. Oxford native who's done a ton of community work within the city since he returned to Ole Miss. Team leader, big time team leader, was at Auburn. There was a game between Ole Miss and Auburn where at the end of the game, literally almost every Auburn player that was on the roster with JJ walked up to him after the game and wished him well, said hi, caught up with him and stuff like that. This dude's a leader, big time leader, 6'2", 325 pounds, maybe a little undersized height-wise when it comes to the defensive tackle position. But watching what guys like Ed Oliver have done, what guys like Kalijah Kancey have done, I think you're going to be okay. I think you're going to be okay. And he's really disruptive, can get after quarterbacks, also very stout in the run game. 325 pounds, can kind of clog up the middle and stuff like that. I think the Saints need to completely revamp their defensive line by the time that they get into 2026, with really only a couple of guys making it from 2024 into 2026. And a guy like J.J. Pegues would certainly help you get there. Round 4, pick 110. Let's go running back here. DJ Giddens out of Kansas State. Guy that I really, really like. 6'1", 212 pounds, outstanding size. Versatile runner as well. Can run in the man and the zone systems. Can run between the tackles. Can get outside the tackles. All those other things. 4.16 yards after contact. Excellent, excellent, excellent for a running back as well. That's where that size really comes in. He's a dude that's really tough to bring down and really tough to catch. And those are two things. Historically good running back class. Might as well take somebody from it. And then let's build the trenches a little bit for Kliff. Round 4, pick 129, guard Tyler Cooper out of Minnesota. 6'6", 310 pounds. Has experience on the offensive line everywhere except for center. And I think has only taken a few snaps at left guard, but took a considerable amount at right guard. So moving him over to left guard would not be hard. I think you can still find a left guard in free agency. In fact, there's guys like Michael Dieter and stuff like that that could also come from Washington, along with a Kliff Kingsbury. But you want to invest in some youth in the trenches as well. Tyler Cooper in the 4th round is a really, really good way to do it. So Emeka Egbuka leads us off, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. Princely Umanmielen over at Ole Miss is in round 2. Round 3, you get the pairing of Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end out of Bowling Green, as well as J.J. Pegues coming out of Ole Miss. So now we've given 2 big-time pass catchers that can go out there for this offense, and 2 big-time defensive guys that have played together, that understand how to operate with each other's strengths, both of them Ole Miss products, and being able to come in and help bolster that defensive line. continue to build the run game with a DJ Giddens in the 4th round out of Kansas State, and then solidify the interior of your trenches with some youth, assuming you're going to do quite a bit of that in the free agency period, but solidifying it again with some youth with Tyler Cooper at Minnesota. And you still got a couple picks left, right? Because we only did the first 4 rounds here. So pretty solid stuff there. And then, finding out who follows Kliff Kingsbury and all that kind of stuff in terms of giving this offense the juice that you would need to be able to run that Kliff Kingsbury offense here in New Orleans. Steps closer, not fully there. You're going to have to do it all again in the next offseason, but lots of steps closer. Coming up next, we looked at the 2 offensive play callers. Now let's look at the defensive play caller and what a defense-heavy draft could look like for New Orleans and how they could end up still profiting quite a bit over on the offensive side despite a defensive focus. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, who's making the NFL playoffs all the better for you as you continue on watching through there. You also have the College Football Championship tonight. So we're going to be taking a look at that as well. But real quick, I want to let you know, new customers can bet $5. And if you win that $5 bet, you get $300 in bonus bets that you can then use to keep the action going on same-game parlays, bets, odds, lines, props, all that good stuff. You can get into every bit of it over at FanDuel. Tonight, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are going to be the underdogs going up against the Ohio State Buckeyes, and pretty solid underdogs here, 8.5-point underdogs. Can Marcus Freeman pull it out and get the big win? I like Marcus Freeman a lot, a guy that I wouldn't be upset to see added to the New Orleans Saints interview list at some point. I don't think that will happen because why leave Notre Dame when you're finding this much success and when you're an absolute hero over in South Bend. But right now, you can be an absolute hero for yourself by visiting FanDuel.com to join today and getting started with $300 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Even if the New Orleans Saints have a defensive head coach, they can still bolster their offense while making that defense a lot better here in 2025. And one way to do that is, of course, with Aaron Glenn. And I get it. Everybody wants a play caller. Like, no one ever really actually talks about the head coach that they want anymore. Everyone thinks they do. But what they're really talking about is like, oh, I want this play caller. And then that's what ends up kind of like cycling in a bunch of different head coach conversation. But really what you want at head coach is a leader. And Aaron Glenn's a really good leader. And that's one of the reasons why I think, even though his stock dropped with fans after that Washington game, where I mistakenly said that his defense gave up 45 points. It didn't. It actually gave up 38 points. Or no, not 30. Yeah, 38 points, right? If you consider the pick six, but still, like not a great look, right? But also a couple of other turnovers by Jared Goff, so on and so forth. So keep all that in mind. But NFL teams aren't going to react the same way to that game the way that fans will, and that's why that's just how it works. That's why fans are fans. It's fun. It's supposed to be fun, right? You're supposed to swing in emotion and all those other things. The NFL teams won't do that, though. So Aaron Glenn still very much in the mix for the New Orleans Saints and the New York Jets. Don't want to rule that out. There's a chance that dude takes a job this week. So something to watch out for. He has not been connected for an in-person interview at the time that I'm recording this at this moment, but that is expected to be the case at some point this week, that he will do an interview with the New Orleans Saints and likely the New York Jets as well. So let's take a look at what a mock draft could look like feeding into Aaron Glenn's defense. And remember, the focus is on the head coach, not the hypothetical entire coaching staff, right? Still some offensive picks in here, but it's going to be very defense heavy. So here's the couple of free agents that'll be interesting to watch for Aaron Glenn wherever he goes. John Cominsky, the edge rusher, 7.5 career sacks, didn't do anything in 2024, wasn't able to do anything in 2024 with injury and stuff like that. But somebody to watch. Al-Quadin Muhammad, who the Saints drafted, remember, and this is going to be a key name when we get to our first pick in the first round here. But Al-Quadin Muhammad is a guy to watch, could potentially come back to New Orleans along with Aaron Glenn. And then cornerback Carlton Davis, right? Like they went out and they traded for Carlton Davis. They got him, brought him in. Could Carlton Davis follow him? The Saints could use another corner. You have a Carlton Davis on one side, you have a Kool-Aid McKinstry on the other side, and then you finally allow Alontae Taylor to do what he's going to be best at, which is line up on the outside in base sets and then take those slot snaps again when they go into nickel. That's what I expect will happen with him, I think. We'll see. But just the amount of disruption and stuff like that Alontae Taylor brings you as a guy that's in the slot, being able to rush the passer, tackles for a loss, forcing fumbles, getting in the run game, and as well as his coverage, everything like that. Getting another corner is not the worst idea. So depending upon which players follow Aaron Glenn, round 1, pick 9 becomes really interesting because I went with James Pearce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee. Why? He's 6'3", 243 pounds. That's not the Saints prototype, Ross. It's not the Saints prototype for Dennis Allen's defense, but it could be the Saints prototype for Aaron Glenn's defense. But Ross, Aaron Glenn and Dennis Allen's defenses are the same. They're not at all. Like, there are some things that are similar because defenses are similar and offenses across the league are similar, but they're not the same. And it's always so strange to me that like everyone just kind of assumes that because Aaron Glenn worked with Dennis Allen for a little bit that he just uses Dennis Allen's defense. Is his defense similar? Absolutely. Are defenses across the league similar? Absolutely. You have to be a Vic Fangio to be different. You have to be a Brian Flores to be different. You have to be a Steve Spagnuolo to be different, right? But for Aaron Glenn, like having a speed pass rusher is still a big part of his defense. How do we know that? Al-Quadin Muhammad, 6'3", 250 pounds. That ain't a New Orleans Saints. Prototype. But who drafted Al-Quadin Muhammad? The New Orleans Saints. So you get what I'm getting at here, right? Like there would be changes in this New Orleans Saints defense, and I think there needs to be changes in this New Orleans Saints defense anyway. Let's say like if this is a parallel universe, we've Rick and Morty'd ourselves somewhere else in which, Dennis Allen returns to the New Orleans Saints as a defensive coordinator. Changes would have to be made. You can't keep doing the same thing, right? And one of the big changes would be having a speed option. And so having a guy like James Pearce Jr. makes a ton of sense when it comes to that ability to be able to rush the passer, win with bend, win with speed, 6'3", 243 pounds, bulk him up just a little bit, get him into the 250 range. And there you go. You have an Al-Quadin Muhammad if Al-Quadin Muhammad doesn't come with Aaron Glenn. If he does, or a John Cominsky comes with Aaron Glenn, then maybe Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan, makes a lot of sense here. 6'2", 202 pounds, excellent frame for what you're looking for in today's NFL at corner. Just outstanding. Starts for you day one right away. So an alternative option at round 1 there. All right, I got worked up. Let's keep moving on. One of the things that you love on the offensive side for a defense is a good run game. Round 2, pick 40, Cam Scatterbo out of Arizona State. Senior Bowl guy, 5'11", 215 pounds, versatile. He can catch. He can run multiple schemes. 4.09 yards after contact, 1,712 rushing yards, 21 rushing touchdowns in 2024. Can he do it at the NFL level? He won't do that at the NFL level, but he also doesn't need to. Get him in place so that, much like the Detroit Lions offense, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Cam Scatterbo. Get yourself a pair of running backs. It's not the exact same mold as a Montgomery and Gibbs, but get yourself a pair of running backs that you can trust and that will be on the field. I think that's got to be a big part of it. Every defense would want that as well. Round 3, pick 71, went with Deion Walker, the defensive tackle out of Kentucky. Senior Bowl guy, 6'6", 345 pounds. It's Malcolm Brown reincarnate. I mean, just a dude that you just first and second down, put him on the field. Third down, take him off the field. But first and second down, let him dominate the run game. Let him dominate opposing offensive lines. Let him take up 2 or 3 guys on the interior so that your guys on the edge can win. Deion Walker, easy selection for me at round 3. He's a guy that I had to pass up a bunch in all the other mocks because I wanted him for the Aaron Glenn mock, but I didn't want to take multiple picks or take the same prospect in multiple drafts. Round 3, pick 93. Let's go safety on this one. Interesting. Andrew Makuba. I like this guy a lot. 6 foot, 190 pounds, probably going to measure in a little bit less than both of those numbers at the combine, but still 5'11 plus, 190 plus, and you could probably bulk him up too if you want to get him up to 200. But he's got deep safety versatility. He's got robber versatility to be able to come down underneath and make some plays. Really disruptive dude, makes a lot of plays at catch points, times up everything's well, avoids penalties because of that. Slot versatility, also has the speed and athleticism, really good in transition, flips his hips, stays in phase. He just does it all. A guy whose name I can't believe isn't louder right now when it comes to his draft stock. He will not be an East-West Shrine Bowl guy. He will not be a Senior Bowl guy, at least right now. And so it's going to be the combine that potentially raises his stock. But as of right now, round 3, great spot for a guy like Andrew Mukuba, who can come in and start for you day 1 if you can't bring back a Will Harris, for instance. Which, by the way, Aaron Glenn, Will Harris, they've done it together before. We could see Will Harris come back. I think Will Harris is one of those guys I'd love to see re-signed here in New Orleans. Let's go get. We got him a Will Harris, right? No, or there is a Will Harris. We got him a Al-Quadin Muhammad. Let's go get him an Alex Anzalone. How about Notre Dame linebacker Jack Kaiser, one of my favorite linebackers in this year's class, 6'2", 231 pounds, matches Alex Anzalone well at 6'2", 241 pounds. Can cover, can defend the run. Really smart dude, like all the good things, right? So like Jack Kaiser, add him in, and then bam, like your linebacker core is in a bit of a better place. I think there's more work to be done there, but a bit of a better place. And then finally, round 4, pick 129. The other thing that a defense loves is a big-bodied pass catcher on the offensive side that can keep them off the field, right? That can convert some of those third downs and convert in the red zone so that they don't have to walk away with defending field goals a bunch. Oronde Gadsden Jr. out of Syracuse, 6'5", 236 pounds. Bulk him up a little bit, but let him go out there. Mitchell Evans out of Notre Dame is another option here for me. Maybe he's more of a 5th or 6th round option, but because there's so much of a gap between where the Saints pick in the 4th round and where they pick in the 6th round, I went ahead and went with the tight end here because I did want to get a tight end just to be able to highlight kind of the benefit to the defense that a tight end gives you. So James Pearce out of Tennessee leads us off. Could be Will Johnson as well out of Michigan. Cam Scatterbo out of Arizona State in the 2nd round. Deion Walker out of Kentucky, as well as safety Andrew Mukuba coming out of Texas. Those guys in the 3rd round. And then the pairing of Jack Kaiser, linebacker out of Notre Dame, and Oronde Gadsden Jr. out of Syracuse in round 4. There you go. Boom. 3 mocks, 3 coaches. There you go. We'll do more of this. I really enjoy this. Big thank you again to Eric Bro for the awesome suggestion. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we've got a look at Anthony Weaver, the defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins, who's supposed to interview in person on Tuesday. And then Mike Kafka set to interview later on this week as well. I think it's Tuesday for Weaver and then Wednesday for Kafka, if I remember correctly. That might be reversed. I'm sorry if it is. But man, really looking forward to watching both, to kind of diving into both those guys. And Kafka is a really interesting one because for me, if you hire Kafka, you're going right back to the coaching search in a couple years. And I want to discuss the real possibility of that model for the New Orleans Saints. Let's get to that in tomorrow's episode. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us a party day part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.